Guy's 63 years old, and he looks like he's 85 years old. He's bags under his eyes, the glossy, kind of glassy kind of look in his eyes. This guy is an alcoholic, allegedly. How old is Tim Walz? 61 years old. Look at that face just brimming with life and joy. Is it me or does Tom Homan resemble a canned ham? Oh my God, bro. Like what? This dude is ending his evening with like half a bottle of gin a night, you know? Kaitlan Collins interviewed Tom Homan about the Abrego Garcia situation.
My source tonight has spent decades working on immigration enforcement, serving as a top ICE official under President Obama, and now serving as President Trump's border czar. Tom Homan, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you. We heard from President Trump today, essentially telling reporters, talk to the lawyers when he was asked about Judge Boasberg's ruling that probable cause exists to hold officials in criminal contempt, potentially for violating his orders. Do you think that any of your colleagues have violated orders here?
No, I don't. I think we follow the judge's order. I think we'll let that litigate in court. No, DOJ is fighting that in court, but I don't think we did anything wrong.
And so you're not worried about any of the conversations when it came to Judge Boasberg saying turn the deportation flights around, and yet they continued to make their way to El Salvador?
Well, you know, I think the information shows those planes were already near in international water, as far as I know. So I don't think we did anything wrong. According to his written order, I think we did everything by the numbers.
And Siri, you're not ultimately worried here that anyone will be held in contempt?
The Heartland Heathen with $10, 24 hours to end the war. Art of the deal working flawlessly. True.
Or anything like that when, as they continue this fact-finding investigation overall on this effort?
No, I'm not concerned about it. I mean, fact find all they want. I think the evidence is clear. I think DOJ's made a strong case, and we'll let it play out in court. I mean, as I sit here today talking to you, I don't think anybody in the administration did anything wrong. I don't think we actually violated a court.
I mean, so like if the federal courts or any court really like wants to enforce contempt, what mechanism do they use? Who do they send to make the arrest? Is it federal marshals? They rely on the U.S. Marshals Service. Okay. Who does the U.S. Marshal Service report to? It's under the DOJ. It's going to be really interesting if this judge actually tries to enforce a contempt charge and then Pam Bondi's just says, just stand down, don't do anything. It's going to be, it seems like that's where we're headed, but yeah.
Court order.
So we have two judges here. That's Judge Boasberg's ruling that we found yesterday that the president was asked about. The other judge here, the federal judge in Maryland, Judge Zinnes, has been criticizing the government this week for what she says is doing, quote, nothing to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States. Are you personally aware of any steps that have been taken to facilitate his return to the United States?
Look, I think he's a citizen of El Salvador. He's in El Salvador. He's home. He's an illegal alien with a final order of removal. He's a MS-13 member, which is now classified as a terrorist. So we removed an illegal alien, MS-13 member, who has a final order of removal issued by an immigrant.
Yeah, I mean, this is just obviously a trial run to see, you know, I suspect if they get away with this and there's no consequences, this will not be the last court order that they just blatantly ignore throughout the duration of this term.
Immigration judge to his homeland.
So should I read that as?
And it kind of makes sense that they're using this particular issue to do the test run because immigration is by far the strongest issue that Republicans and Trump have. And so I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that this is the fight that they chose to pick this, like that they went into this administration thinking like, okay, you know, we feel like we can just ignore the courts. Like generally, this being the first thing that they try it out on makes sense because they pull a little bit higher on immigration than any of these other issues.
As to say nothing has been done to bring him back to the United States. That's what it sounds like.
I can't speak to everybody in the administration. I can just tell you what my stance is, and I think we did the right thing. I think he's where he should be, and the order of withholding that everybody keeps talking about, order of withholding is you set aside because he's a designated terrorist, which order withholding is meaningless, I believe, according to the attorneys. And look, even if he came back, people think he's going to be released and go back to, no, he's going to be detained. And he's going to be removed as per the order of removal, either to El Salvador or another country. So this person has an order of removal. He's seen 2 different immigration judges, and he's been ordered deported. That's exactly what happened.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that withholding removal order essentially said the one place he can't go is El Salvador, where he's from. He claimed that he was concerned he could be persecuted if he was returned. Why not simply have him return to the U.S., detain him, and then deport him to a third country? Wouldn't that be in accordance with the law?
Yeah.
I think we're in accordance with the law. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I'm not DOJ fighting this case, but my opinion, and the years I spent doing this job, he is now designated a terrorist. The withholding orders is set aside. And we got to remember, the withholding order was issued years ago. Things have changed. El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the region because of the steps President Bukele take. You know, the gangs are no longer operating on the streets of Venezuela, in El Salvador. That's why he built that prison. So I don't think the gang danger that they once thought was there is even there anymore. So the situation has changed. It's much like temporary protection status, the TPS. That's only temporary. When the conditions in the country have changed, TPS can be ended and they can be removed to the country.
But why not make that argument in court? If you think that you can make the argument that he is fine to go back to El Salvador, why not just make that argument and try to terminate that order that said that the one place he couldn't go to was the one place that he was sent to?
Look, again, I'm not litigating this case at DOJ. I think DOJ is continuing to litigate the case, but I think we're in a good stance. I think we're in a good place. Again, I'm not an attorney. I can just speak to my experience as a guy who enforces immigration law, but I think that DOJ has a strong case, and I think we're standing by what we did was the correct thing to do.
Has the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to your knowledge, attempted to revise that withholding removal order?
I have not spoken to Pam Bondi about this.
You mentioned the Justice Department. One thing that has been on my mind as we've been covering this is President Trump was in office in 2019 when an immigration judge granted this withholding removal status to Abrego Garcia. It was the Trump Justice Department then that decided not to appeal it or fight it. Do you believe that they should have here?
Well, the conditions of the country are different now than they were back then. Maybe the condition of the country is one that the withholding made sense. I mean, I wasn't familiar with the case back in the first administration, but a lot of things could be.
The slippery little dog just slipping his way out of this and that.
Change since then. The condition of the country could change. The ruling could change. The facts of the case could change. I'm not familiar on the investigation, the removal from back in the Trump 40.
What do you mean you're not familiar with it? Aren't you the borders are? Like, if you're not familiar with it, then wouldn't that be a sign that you're just shitty at your job? You haven't had time. You haven't had time to comb over the court filings and the police reports and what are you doing over there? What would you say you do day to day? How is it not your job to be informed about these issues? Of course, he's read these court filings. Of course, he's just lying.
I'm sure DOJ is well aware of it, and they're litigating it as they seem appropriate.
But are they litigating it? Because what we heard from the Attorney General essentially the other day was that it's out of their hands to have him return to the United States, that it's up to the president of El Salvador.
Well, that's a question for Pam Bondi. The DOJ has their mission. I have my mission. That's a question for her.
But you are someone who's worked in immigration for decades, and you have a view here that you believe that this was the right move ultimately to have him sent here. But wouldn't the proper stance here essentially be to contest this in court, to try to terminate that order and then have him sent, and then you wouldn't be in the middle of this massive legal fight that is playing out over where the administration's right is here and whether or not they violated a court order?
Can I just say this guy looks like shit? I'm going to look up his age and it's going to be like 62. He looks like he's 85. He's 63 years old. The guy's 63 years old and he looks like he's 85 years old. These bags under his eyes, the glassy kind of look in his eyes, red discoloration on his face. This guy is an alcoholic, allegedly. This guy is deep in the sauce, you guys. Like, you know who else is 63 years old? Tim Walz. And that guy looks like younger than I do. How old is Tim Walz? 61 years old. Look at that face just brimming with life and joy. Look, news on Homan. Oh, interesting. Interesting timing. Is it me or does Tom Homan resemble a canned ham? Oh my God, bro. Like what? This dude is ending his evening with like half a bottle of gin a night, you know?
I think they violated quarter. I think we did the right thing. And I think it's been litigated by DOJ, and I'll let them fight that out in court or not fight out in court, but I think we did the right thing. As far as what we should do next in judicial process or litigation, I'll leave it up to DOJ. That's their job.
But of course, you are someone who is at the center of
what was the nickname that the lawyer, Saul? Was it Slippery Saul from Better Call Saul? Or Slippin' Jimmy? Slippin' Jimmy, is that what it was called? He's just so slippery. He's just like, I don't know, talk to Bondi. Not my case. I'm not a lawyer.
Of the immigration fight and deporting people who are here illegally. This one individual.
How's that the center of immigration fight and all these? It's just, you know, Kaitlan, no one asks these questions about the proper vetting of the millions of people the Biden administration pushed across the border, at least in this country illegally. No one's concerned about the vetting. Then all of a sudden now everybody wants to be concerned about the vetting of people that even be deported. I mean, it seems like a one-side show, but I stand by the fact that I think things were done right with this case. He's an MS-13 gang member. He has a final order of removal. He is designated terrorist, and he's back in El Salvador, his homeland. And anything beyond that, we'll let the courts settle on it.
You say everything was done right here. And I heard Stephen Miller in the Oval Office on Monday also arguing that he was lawfully deported. But this administration has admitted in court that he was mistakenly deported, that he should not have been deported.
Yeah.
Look, they say there's administrative error, but if you look at the case, if I look at the case as a non-attorney, just an enforcement officer, I think things were done right. Again, they're talking about, well, it might have been a paper error about the withholding. But if we look at the case and he's designated terrorist, I think that withholding has been set aside.
This was not a paperwork error. The courts specifically said that this guy specifically should not be sent to El Salvador, and you sent him to El Salvador. That is beyond just a paperwork error. For him to classify it like that is mind-blowing.
That is my opinion. But again, we'll let DOJ fight it out.
Well, I mean, the Solicitor General, it was the third in the chain of command at the DOJ, has said that this was an error.
Yeah.
Then I'll let them deal with it. I'm giving you my opinion. I said I'm not going to get in the middle of what DOJ is arguing in court. I'm telling you, from my stance, what we've done, I believe is correct, and that's why DOJ is standing by the fact that what we did was right.
You know, I've seen some people look at this and say they're worried that the stance of this administration when it comes to this is that if someone is deported by accident, that they have no responsibility for them once they are in the custody of a foreign government. What would you say to that?
Well, they're in the custody of El Salvador. He's an El Salvadoran national. He was born in El Salvador. El Salvador has him in custody, and El Salvador decided what happened to him. I mean, again, the El Salvadoran president made it clear he's not going to release him. So again, I'm going to go back. The DOJ, they can fight this out in the court. Says I'm not a part of that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. So we'll let the courts, decide what the next steps will be.
Even though it was a U.S. immigration judge who said the one place he can't go is El Salvador. I mean, he could have been deported literally anywhere else.
Again, we can keep going back and back, but again, that was years ago. Country conditions were different. That gang no longer exists in El Salvador. He had been designated a terrorist since that time. 2 different federal judges said he's an MS-13 member. A police department said he's an MS-13 member. ICE data shows he's an MS-13 member. El Salvador says he's an MS-13 member. As you know, MS-13 been designated terrorist. The case has the facts of the case have changed since that first decision. So again, I'll leave it up to the DOJ to argue that case in court, but that is where I stand, and that's my belief.
Yeah, it was 6 years ago, of course, when that happened when Trump was in office, as I noted. In her ruling, the judge here, Judge Zinnes, that I quoted of Maryland, said, quote, no evidence before the court connects Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or any other criminal organization. You just argued yourself that you believe there is evidence of that. Why has that not been included in this? Why has the administration not made that argument, not just publicly on television, but in court?
She's good, man. She's good at her job. Let me tell you what.
Well, there is evidence. Like 2 different federal judges said he was MS-13 member, immigration court. That's a part of the file. The file's there. And I think yesterday the administration did release police reports on the subject being an MS-13 member and being involved.
Atención, arriba, atención, El Salvador has him. El Salvador is where is from. El Salvador is far away. El Salvador is El Salvador.
That sounds nothing like Saul Goodman. That is not a great AI.
All with MS-13 activities, and even had rank within MS-13. I think some of those reports were released yesterday.